Welcome back to Universe. I'm Andrew, and today I'm playing Ynaros Fallin. This is a 2 or 4 player head-to-head game with a mix of mechanisms, and I'm going to be playing as the 2-player version, although the 4-player version is like a team mode, which is very similar. But yeah, I'll be trying to teach it as I play. This is a game that is crowdfunding on Kickstarter either now or soon, depending on how the scheduling works out. And I'll have a link in the description so you can follow the campaign page either way. And when you do back or decide to pick up the game at some point, if you're watching this in the future, just make sure to pay attention to which version of the game you're getting and what the components are, because this is very much a prototype. And in fact, this particular prototype has a bit of wear on it. So please excuse anything that is not final, anything that is a bit worn down. And again, pay attention to your version of the game that you pick up, because these prototypes are representative of miniatures that will appear in the deluxe version. These are the shamans, and you can tell they're shamans because they have their masks on. If it doesn't have a mask on, that is a follower, and I've got some followers here for yellow and over there for blue. And the followers can be upgraded during gameplay to become shamans. And in the non-deluxe version, just have meeples for the shaman meeples and also follower meeples. So the objective of the game is going to be to have the most points when the game ends, which will happen when 3 of these piles, there are 6 different location piles. Some are mixes of orange and green, while others are red. But regardless of what color the stack is, if it's empty, it's going to count toward the end of the game. The game can also end if a player has 6 locations claimed to their own board. So this is the yellow player board, and here is the blue player board. And normally you'd probably have them on opposite sides, but because I'm playing both sides and for the camera, I've got them both here. And these 6 slots around the sides are where you can put the locations as you gain them. And when that's full, that will also trigger the game end. Now this is the advanced side. There is actually 3 different versions of the game in the base box, or at least again in this particular prototype. So this would be the basic version. You've got 6 slots to store gems, and then of course your 6 location spots. I'm playing on stage 3, or the 3-star version, where the base box has a few extra things that I'll be covering as they can't come up. But on this side, I've only got 4 spots for gems, and then I've got 3 slots for experience fragments, which I have over here. There's another way that the game can end, which is that if somebody loses all of their vitality crystals, so each player has started with 4, and if you lose them all, you're out. With all that out of the way, let's get started. I've also drawn a hand of 5 shadow cards for each player from the shadow deck over here. And those are just going to be a mix of yellow, blue, or yellow-blue, which I don't see any of in yellow's hand. We'll see those come into play soon. Each player gets to do 2 actions, and I think yellow will start out with a move. And this is their power die, and it starts on 5. It goes from 2 to 7 as opposed to 1 to 6, as you might expect from a cube of this configuration. But it's going to be 5 from 2 to 7. And this die is actually not rolled during the course of the game. So you might think of it less of a die and more of as a tracker. But in this case, 5 means that yellow has 5 movement points to spend. And the phase when you take actions is called your deeds phase. But so yeah, we're going to get 5 movement points and go 1, 2, and this is actually a space. We're going to go 3 and then skip right over it and go 4 to that space there. Now on that space, you can see that there is a little tile, which means he gets to claim that right away. So yellow gets this token, which can be used to add 3 to their die. In this case, the different tokens do different effects. But I'm going to put that over onto yellow's board until they spend it. And yellow still has 1 movement point remaining because that only took 4, and the movement points can be split up. So they're going to spend it on this follower. The followers start way off on this floating thing, whereas the home for the shamans is much closer. So shamans have a big benefit in that they have less traveling to do to get out onto the main board. And you'll see characters reset their positions multiple times, so that can be super relevant. Now, after you move, there's 1 extra thing, which is the die is reduced by 1. So now they have a 4. And I think I'm actually going to move again. So I'm going to move the shaman 1, 2 onto that space there. And then the other 2 movement will go toward the follower. And those were 2 deeds that yellow has performed, which means their deeds phase is over. And we move on to their fate step, which is when you resolve the spaces that you may have now landed in. In this case, the follower is just on this track here, nothing happens. But over here for the shaman, they've ended their move on a red location. The red locations start face up, whereas these other locations start face down, but can be revealed. And I should say that the rules have you actually draft between the two players in a sense, in that each player gets to take turns looking at the top of one of the stacks before the stacks are placed on the board. And then in reverse turn order, so starting with the player who's going to go second, they will look at one stack, look at whatever tile is on top, and then choose which of those 4 locations to put it on. So there can be some strategy during setup, and all 4 of the top tiles are known by one of the 2 players as play begins. In this case, I have just set it up randomly, so I don't know what is on top of the stacks, but just wanted to let you know about that particular element of strategy that can go into where you go. Because if he had ended here instead, he might have, actually, I think you have to end here, and then you would flip them over, which we'll get into later, in order to potentially claim them onto your own board. And if you knew what one of them was that you particularly wanted, that could change your opening moves. But in this case, I headed straight for a red location, which will work a little bit differently. So during this fate step, he's going to resolve that effect. And apologies for the upside downness, but just based on the placement on the board. That one means that we can roll our die. So even though I just said you don't roll it, we can roll that die, which actually should have been reduced to a 3 after that movement, in order to gain a green or orange gem. Now 3 is almost the lowest that this die can go to, so I'm happy to roll that in order to gain a green or orange gem. So I'm going to dip in here, and I don't know which one, I'll just take a green one. And we've got 4 spots to slot that. I think that's just above the camera's cutoff there. So yellow player now has 1 green at the cost of having to roll their die, which they're actually happy to do as long as they don't roll a 2. Let's see if I can avoid bumping things. And we rolled a 3, so it stayed the same anyway. And I was slightly off there. That does not happen during the fate phase. That happens during the next step, which is called the cantrip step, where we could also move this crystal onto this slot here. Now, when you have 3 crystals in these 3 spots, you transform them into victory points. But for now, I think let's just hold on to it. We've got room for more crystals, and I don't know that I want to spend them as points quite yet. So just for clarity, nothing happened during our fate step, but during our cantrip step, we resolved that red location. And now it's the blue player's turn. They've also started with a 5 on their shadow die. Oh, apologies before I get too far. This tracker also steps 1. This red location is decaying from use. And when it does decay, we'll move on to the next one. And when that one is fully decayed, that will be one of our empty stacks toward the game end. So for the sake of showing off new mechanics and trying new things, I'm going to have the blue players do something else. They're going to do an action which raises the value of their shadow die from 5. We're going to go up to 7. So this is their hand of shadow cards. This is one of the bicolor ones I was talking about. It counts as your color or your opponent's, and your own color is much more valuable in this game. But I think blue is going to give up 2 of their own color cards, discarding 2, and that will raise the value of their die by the number of cards discarded. The color doesn't matter for that purpose. And if you're playing on the level 1 version of the game, that's all that would happen from that action. And if you're already up at 5, I probably wouldn't recommend spending one of your 2 actions on it. However, in the level 2 version of the game, performing the discarding cards action also lets you place shadow tiles. Now, because blue discarded 2 of their own color, they get to place 2 of their own color tile. So those are going to look like this, and there are a few different variations of which tiles they can place that hopefully we'll get to later. But in this case, they're just placing 2 of their own color, and they can put them anywhere they want. So they're going to put them here and here because that's where they would like to put them. They discard 2 cards, so they got to place 2 tiles. And now they're going to do the move. And because they have a 7 on their die now, they're going to get 7 movement points. But the special thing about the tiles is that you can slide across your own tiles for no movement. So for a single movement, the shaman is going to go 1 and then 2, pick up this, and looks like this one let them turn a crystal into 3 points. Or rather, when they turn crystals into points, they get 3 extra. And they still have 5 more movement points. So they can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And end their turn, or their movement there. Since they moved, their movement, the shadow die reduces by 1 down to 6. You know what? I'm actually going to say that they did that in the other order. We're going to have the shaman end there. Not sure if that's super important, but I'm going to stick with that. So actually what happens during the fate phase now is they can reveal tiles. Now you'll notice that each of these tiles has some number of filled in white glowing orbs and some number of empty. So in this case, full, empty. So this one costs 3 points to flip over. The blue player has 6 because that is the value remaining on their shadow die. And since they are doing this, because there's one of their characters on here, or rather, because one of their characters is on here, they must flip 6 points if able, spending them how they want. So in this case, they'll definitely choose to flip this one for 2 of those 6 points, revealing that magical land. And with 4 more, you know what? They're going to flip this one over on their opponent's side. And now those 2 lands are available to be conquered. Incidentally, they've got a character on this one here. This one requires that your shadow die be at least 5, and it is a 6, and they have a character there, so I think they're also going to do this during the fate phase, and they get to place that onto their player board, putting them 1/6 of the way toward winning. And you can see that this says 5 on it, so they've also scored 5 points for having their first location. There are a couple costs to this. So the character who gained control of this land has to go back to their home. It is a shaman, and the shamans go back to that space. In addition, their die has to drop down to the minimum of 2. Also, because they captured a green land, they get a green crystal. So now they have 1 as well. They're going to choose not to lock their crystal into that with the cantrip, and they'll end their turn. Also, I forgot something, which is that when this shaman entered this red location, they should have claimed a red crystal just for arriving there. They don't get it every turn. It's just when you go there. Also, there's a rule that you cannot move a character and have them end on the same space they started on. So we can't just like send them around in a circle in order to claim that red crystal again. I think yellow wants in on this shadow tile action as well, and they're going to make a weird, cheeky move. I don't know if this is good. They're going to spend a yellow card, which means they can make their own color of tile. Actually, they're not. They're going to spend 3 of the enemy color card. 2 of them are for a second type of tile, which is this pure shadow tile. So instead of being like a free movement across, like we just saw with the blue player, these tiles take 2 movement to enter. And yellow's going to mess up their opponent a bit by putting them over there. And then the third one, for a single enemy color card, or any color card, you can take one of your own tiles, but instead of placing it on its pure colored side, you place it on this bicolor side, which for you counts as being your color. For your enemy, it counts as being one of these black tiles, and they're going to put it there. And that is a shadow tile, or that is a group of 3 shadow tiles. Now, I think I mentioned that shadow tiles are part of level 2 version of the game, but part of the level 3 version of the game is that once there are 3 shadow tiles in that configuration, one of these shadow temples is placed such that it is touching all 3 of the shadow tiles. And if a player ends their turn in one of those 3 spaces that are associated with the shadow temple, they will score a number of points equal to the number of tiles in the temple. And for some reason, I thought we were going to be able to get there with that. So I'm actually going to spend 1 more card as part of our play cards action. And this one will be just for our own color to help us move here. So we'll put that there. And that will put our die up to 7 because I played 4 cards. And then the second action will be to move. We're just going to move the follower 7, but again, this is going to be a free. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm actually not sure if it takes that 7th movement point to get onto that tile since it's yellow. I think if we wanted to move through it, it would have been free. I'm not sure. But regardless, that's where I want to end my turn because we're going to get 3 points for that. Actually lose 1 pip on the die, going down to 6 after the movement. And I left my shaman here to perform that red action. Not quite as thrilled about rolling my die this time now that I have a 6, but I do want to take one of those crystals. I'm going to gain this orange one, I think. So we're going to have to roll the die, and got the 6 again. So we get to keep that, which is nice. This has to decay 1 more time, and we're going to get 3 points for the temple, going up to 3 first points of the game. In addition, I'm thinking about cashing in these 3 crystals with the conversion cantrip. So you can see the 3 different colored crystals I've collected on my player board. It's almost full. So I'm going to take all 3 of those at the end of my turn, and I get to move them over to here. You can move 1 to 3 per turn, but once you've locked them into one of these slots, they're locked in. However, also once you have filled up all 3 slots, you convert them into points. Because we have 3 different colors, we're going to get 15 points. 3 of the same color would be 12, and another mix of 2 and 1 would be 10. So now all 3 of these, we're giving them up. We're going to get 15 more, going up to 18 points, which is just 2 points shy of the threshold to get our first experience fragment, which again is a level 3 version of the game feature. So it's back to blue, and their die is down to 2. They've still got 3 cards, so they could play cards and bring it up. But blue has some catching up to do, and I think they need to increase their die. They're definitely going to spend at least 2 cards to increase it, and of course as they do so they can place tiles. Yellow is not their color, so they're going to be placing these shadow tiles, and they're going to put them over here to kind of block off that yellow tile that yellow created to impede that free movement. And they probably want to play their last card as well. I think this is a nice place to put it, even if they might not use it right away. So 3 cards is going to put their 2 up to a 5, but then they're going to move, so I'm going to move it down to a 4. They're going to have 5 movement points to spend, but I don't know if they're going to use it because they're just going to go 1 to there. You know what? They may as well. They can go 2, 3, 4, and still wasting 1 movement, but they get to claim this tile for 2. We'll let them place 2 shadow tiles. I think shadow tile refers to any of them or their own color, or I'm not sure what it refers to. All right, these are all considered shadow tiles, so I guess you can place any of them with this little chip that they just picked up. And then as they end their turn, going into the fate phase, because this character is on one of these, they're going to spend their die's worth of points to flip locations. And they're going to use all 4 from their die to pay for the 4 on this. And they revealed a 5. Costs a 5 and they only have a 4, so they're not going to be able to claim this tile this turn. But it'll let them draw 2 cards and place 3 tiles if they were able to get it. I think yellow is happy to come over here and get this one. So they're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to go there. The movement, bringing their die from 6 down to 5. And they're going to use their second action to draw cards. So this action we haven't done yet, but this is just draw 5 cards straight up. That's one of the big ways you can refill your hand. Another way you can refill your hand is with special abilities. For example, going into the yellow fate phase, they are going to be able to pay the cost of that 5. They have to send their character who activates at home. They have to bring their die down to a minimum of 2, and they get to claim this tile, which is going to let them get one of those special ability tiles and draw 3 cards. And these green tiles are one-time use. So once you do it, you'll put a black cube on it to show that it's been used, and then that's it. And then for claiming a green tile, they get a green cube. Also for ending their turn on that temple, it still has 3 hexes. They get 3 more points, bringing them up to 21, which is the first threshold needed to grab an experience fragment. And these are the special abilities they have to choose from. When you get a location, you can get an extra crystal. When you use a yellow crystal in battle, you get 4 points, which we haven't done any battle at all yet. Hopefully that will show up before the game ends. This is the same thing but for red. This is the same thing but for green. This lets you discard 2 cards to draw 2 cards, and the rulebook's not clear, but I believe that would be a once per turn. You can do it once every turn. And then this one is you ignore the fatigue step, which I think the rules have deprecated that. Again, this is a prototype, but I believe in this case I'll play that as after you move, you would reduce your die by 1. That ability would let you not have to reduce your die by 1. I might be kind of making that up because that's not exactly what it said, so let's try it out. That's the ability we want to use. Discard 2, draw 2 every turn is quite good. So it's getting an extra crystal whenever you get a location. But I'm going to stick with this one. So blue is going to use their special tile they got to create 2 shadow tiles. So we're going to spend that, and they're going to create 2 blue shadow tiles. One of them right here, and one of them covering up part of the temple. So when you want to cover a temple space, or when you want to cover any space, not temple space, any space that already has a tile on it, it basically doubles the cost of how many cards it requires. Now using this token, I don't see anything that says I would have to use both of those uses to place a single tile. So I'm going to be able to place this tile covering up a dark shadow tile with a blue shadow tile, and now that temple has shrunk. Now why not place both of these to shrink that temple down to 1? Well, it's not allowed. You can only shrink a temple size once per turn. Also, each temple can only be shrunk down to a minimum of 1. So once the temple is placed, it will not be removed from the board. It will just be in fewer hexes. Now the blue player is going to use a move. They've got 4 movement points, and this blue shadow means this can move directly over that onto the red space. They get to claim a red crystal for doing that. And with 3 more movement, they can skip over here. 1, 2, 3, take that center hex and claim a new special ability which is going to be to add 3 to their die when they need it. Their die will then reduce down to 3, and their second action, I think they'll also draw 5 cards. As they end their turn, they're on one of these mystic hexes, so they have to use their 3 value to reveal locations, and they're going to choose this one over here, which is going to require a 6, and this is our first orange location revealed. So this one is something that can be used every turn to re-roll their die once somebody claims that one. Oh, and the follower gets to activate the red location, so it's going to degrade by 1, but they get to draw 3 more cards from that effect. I think it's time for yellow to cash in this ability, so they're going to take a black cube and mark that it's been used. They get to pull another one of these special abilities, and they got the ability to re-roll their battle die. So again, we haven't done any battling yet. This also lets them draw 3 cards though. So I got a bunch of cards, a little bit too heavy on the blues. And I think yellow wants to score again. So they want the crystal that comes with claiming that location. So they're going to pitch a bunch of cards to try to make it happen. First of all, they're going to want to raise their die up to a 7. I think they're going to pay all of their own color of cards to try to place some tiles that'll make it happen. So I'm going to try to make this work. Let's see. So first of all, we got to pay 2 to cover up this shadow hex. So this way we can use our yellow shadow hex by covering up that one. That takes 2 to cover an existing tile. Let's put 1 here, 1 here, and 1 here. So we paid 5 cards. We get to go up to 7. I think this will work. So if our second action is to move, we can go all the way across that for 1, 2, and then across both of these for 3, 4, and then this character can go 5, 6, 7, claim a red gem. I'm not going to get points at the end of the turn for that particular temple, unfortunately, but our die is at least a 6, which means we're able to pay the cost of having at least a 6. It's going to have to drop down to a 2. We get to claim that to here. We get to claim an orange gem for doing so. Our follower on the red spot gets to roll our die in order to give us, that's a 5, it's an upgrade, and we get a green or orange, and I'll take an orange because those seem slightly harder to come by. That fills up our slots. That also degrades this tile, so this location is discarded, which reveals this new red location, which involves rolling your opponent's die and getting +1 of the ability tokens. We reset the degradation on that. Well, this guy actually should have had to come home when he claimed that land. But we can also turn in 3 more gems over here for 15 more points. And blue is really starting to fall behind. We're at 36. It's actually only 4 points shy of getting a second experience fragment. Actually, blue kind of wants to attack, but they cannot because we have this barrier of yellow tiles and a blue character can't pass through it. I mean, technically they can, but you know what they can do? They can use this. So let's do an attack. So they're going to use this ability. So I use it with the cube. They get to draw a card. Unfortunately, another yellow. And they get to place 4 shadow hexes. I think they're going to be a bit mean and just cover all those up. Make it extremely hard for us. They still have 1 more. Now it's worth noting that your hexes are limited and blue is a bit lower in the stack than yellow. They still have 1 more to place. So they might want to place one of the dark shadow hexes just to conserve the blues. And whenever you place the bicolor, that is one of your tiles. So that's kind of a good reason you might, because these are generally they're cheaper to place and they can be used. Actually, that's a good point. I guess there's not a great reason not to place them on this side. It also forms a temple, a little bit of a lopsided one. And they'll put their 4th one on this existing temple, covering up the yellow bicolor tile, which could be relevant if they want to jump in there and start scoring 2 points at the end of the turn. It can also be relevant at the end of the game when control of each temple is determined by pieces of each color there, and that scores 5 points per temple. Then I think blue needs to up their die. So that was all just using this location. I think they're going to save their blues and they're going to pitch 4 yellows to bring their 3 up to a 7. Of course, the only tiles they can place with those are going to be these. Well, that's not true. They can place blue bicolors, but that's dipping into their stack unnecessarily. So they might try to mess with yellow a bit more and fill up these other surrounding spaces. Probably without necessarily trying to put another temple down though. Maybe this one here, although that kind of cuts them themselves off. Maybe just this spot is better. Then they're gonna move. So they got 7 points of movement. 1, 2, and 3. We'll put them right in the same space as the yellow shaman. So that's gonna be a shaman on shaman battle. They still have 4 movement left. I think they're just gonna use 2 of it to go to there. Their die drops to 6. And now that they've done 2 actions, we go into fate phase. And because these 2 enemy shamans, followers don't fight, but enemy shamans are in the same space, a battle's going to happen. And now the attacker goes first in the battle. We also need to set our starting positions so that we're going to use this battle board over here on the right side. You can see this -1 down to -7 on both sides. So the players are going to be doing actions to push the other person back down into the negative, or if they are in the negative, they can use those same points instead to bring themselves back up closer to 0. And that's going to happen until either somebody just backs out and says, okay, you got me, or somebody literally has nothing else to put into the fight. The loser of the fight is going to lose 1 of their 4 vitality crystals, which also means they're going to have -3 points at the end of the game, and that vitality crystal is going to go to the winner, where it can function as a wild. So there are good reasons not to give up. On top of all that, blue has attacked yellow in their home space. Whenever you go to your opponent's home space, the shaman starting space, you get to evoke, or you get to bring in a new follower or upgrade a current follower into a shaman, which can be pretty powerful. Blue's going to get to do that for free if they win this fight. But again, blue gets to go first since they attacked, and they're going to either play 1 crystal or up to 3 cards from their hand. Now, if you play a crystal, you get to roll the battle die that matches your color. If your opponent has already played a crystal, you cannot play the crystal of that same color. So if blue had a yellow crystal, they might strongly consider playing it now to prevent yellow from being able to play any crystals because they only have yellow. But blue doesn't have yellow. So in this case, there's not going to be any fight over colors of crystal. Both players will have the opportunity to use a crystal if they want to. But to kick things off, I think blue is not going to play a crystal. They're going to do the other option, which is to play up to 3 cards. And they're going to play 3 of their own cards. So playing a card of your own color gives you 2 points in that it will push your opponent 2 spaces back. But they can play up to 3 cards. So they're going to play another one. And then they're going to play another one. Now the third one, though, does not go in a row. It actually goes as a little hat. And you've now made a little triangle of cards. And that card topper there indicates that it's topping things off, and it basically is worth as many points as the 2 that it is the hat on top of. So in this case, that was 2, 4, which means this third card is actually worth 4 points. It doubles the total. So we're actually pushing yellow all the way back to the -8 on the first turn before they got to do anything. And when they hit that skull, that doesn't mean the fight's over. That doesn't mean they're dead, but it does mean they have to pay something immediately. So they've either got to pay a crystal or they've got to pay one of their cards. So they're going to discard a card, and that's going to put them in a bad back foot. Now they could keep fighting. They could pay a crystal to roll their die. Now yellow could stay in the fight, but all they have left are 3 cards of the enemy color. So they could do the same type of configuration as this, but since they're not the blue player, this would be worth 1, 2, 4 points total, not 8. Then on the blue player's turn, they wouldn't have anywhere to push back the yellow player, but they could move themselves forward with whatever they choose to do. And then as the yellow player would take their next turn, they would be stuck in the back, and they would have to pay another resource. And having played all these cards, they would have to discard their crystal. Or they could play their crystal now and roll the yellow die. I feel like they need to cut their losses here. I don't think they want to put any crystals into this fight. But you know what? Maybe putting 4 enemy cards into it makes sense. 3 blue cards. Blue aren't very good for them anyway. So you know what? Let's pay 3 blue, again, in that same configuration in order to move up 4. I discarded them, but I actually should have kept them in front of the yellow player like this, because there's another thing you can do, which is to play a crystal onto your triangle configuration for a special effect. So don't forget that yellow does technically have those available. And blue has a blue and a yellow. I think they're going to go for it. They're going to pay a red crystal in order to roll the red battle die. Try to push yellow back again. They got a 3, which is not super great actually. So it's going to push yellow back to -7. That actually created the opportunity for yellow to do the thing I was just talking about. It's to put the cube onto your hat, which again I discarded, but they're going to put that onto that of their own. And that has a special effect, which is you can set your opponent's position on the track equal to your own, or you can become equal to theirs. So you know what? I think they might want to become back up to the 0. So moving back to blue, they're going to pay a yellow card to push yellow back 1. And now yellow has nothing left. They have no cubes to put into it. So they're not going to be able to roll a battle die. They have no more cards. So they have to pass. Blue is the winner of the fight by a single point. They did drain a lot out of yellow, though, during the course of that fight. But yeah, I guess having 3 matching cards, even if they're not your own color, is a pretty strong thing to have in a battle, as long as you're willing to spend a cube to sync up your positions there. So blue does get to claim 1 vitality from yellow, and that's going to be, again, like a wild. And blue gets to score 1 point because yellow was at -1. So the battle track will reset for later. And that's actually blue's first point, which is not good. Technically, they netted 3 more points out of that, though, by reducing 1 vitality. Now, normally when you are in a battle, the loser is sent home. In this case, the yellow player is the loser and is already at home. So it's actually the victor who is sent home. So the blue player goes back to there. Also, when you go into this space, as I mentioned, you get the opportunity to evoke if you go to your opponent's hearth there. So blue gets to make another follower, or they can convert their existing follower into shaman. And I think they will convert it into a shaman. So we're going to take this little guy and put this mask on him. And there we go. That means he's now a shaman. And normally you would have to pay a crystal to make that conversion. But because he got to do it, because he just won a battle in that space, the cost is negated. Now he can also resolve claiming a magic land, so that newly shaman status character can claim that position. That's going to give them a green crystal, and they have the 5 die requirement, so the die will drop back down to 2. This guy's sent home, but because he's a shaman now, his home is the hearth, so he doesn't have to go an extra 4 spaces. And blue is going to get this ability to draw 2 cards and place 3 shadow tiles 1 time. Now blue has 3 crystals, 2 greens and a pink, the wild, but they prefer to score the 15 points. Although having only 1 open slot is a little scary. But I think they can lock 1 in. They don't have to convert it into points. They'll just lock in one of the 2 greens. So they have 2 spots open. And one more thing I should say, just in case you're playing the level 1 or level 2 version of the game, I'm playing on the level 3 version battle board, which goes only to -8. The level 1 and 2 versions of the game go to -10. I feel like I like the 8 regardless, though. I like the tighter combat, being able to initiate a fight and just push your opponent all the way back on the first blow is kind of satisfying. So yellow has no cards in hand and no crystals. So what crystals can they get? They've got a 5 on the die. There are no lands showing except for the red ones, and their entire hearth got blocked. So they actually can't move their shaman onto the board unless they place tiles, which they can't do because they don't have any cards. So I think I'm going to have them move. So they got 5 movement, and they're going to go 1, skip the yellow, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the other side, which means they get to claim a red gem. And then the second action, I think, is just to draw 5 cards. They could also re-roll their die once per turn. 5 is pretty good, though. But what the heck? Let's roll it. So they get a 2. And then as they end their turn, they can claim that, draw 3 cards from that red land. A couple more yellows is nice. So now they've got 8 cards to work with. Next turn to carve some paths out. So blue would love to get an orange gem to be able to cash in points. Actually, red would be fine too, because they have the pink wild one. Winning another fight would be nice, but they only have 1 card, so that doesn't feel good compared to yellow's newfound 8 cards. Their die is also showing a 2, which means they probably need to pump that up. So let's spend their first action to draw 5. Actually, no. We're going to do this, draw 2. This tile here is going to let them draw 2 and place 3 shadow tiles. Who needs movement when you have tiles? The blue's also going to use this tile to plump up their die by 3, so they don't have to discard. I don't think there's any need to use the +3. They can stay at 2. They're still going to use the 3 shadow tiles they get to place. They're going to put one here, one here. They're running low on their blue stack, so they'll probably put a dark shadow maybe right there. And I was wrong. They do need the +3 because a 2 is not going to be enough movement to go 1, 2, 3. They get to claim this, which is another conversion +3 points. And then during fate, they'll use the Mystic Gate. And then now they have 5 to flip. So they'll 3 on this one here, 1 on this one here. And that's another thing to think about is this costs a 6 die to flip to claim it, and they only have a 5 on their die. So that'd be another reason to have done that a little differently. But I'm not sure they could have done that much anyway. So now there are ways to get orange and red cubes showing, but no ways to get the green crystals. So I think yellow will start by using this ability to re-roll their die. And just a 3. Definitely going to have to pump that up. I mean, they could use this +3, but they have to place tiles anyway. So they're going to have to spend a lot of their yellows here. And I think we're going to convert. Actually, playing yellow shadow tiles, the bicolors don't require your own color. So they can do like this to place this. And then maybe like that to do another one. Now 2 out of 3 of those temple tiles are yellow. It's also 4 discarded cards to bring them up to 7. And then they can do a move. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. As they end their turn, they're going to have to reveal 7 worth of hidden lands, but there's only 5 worth. So these 2 are revealed. And then that follower over there is going to get to claim that land. This one over here has the requirement that you have 2 characters on the main board. So if we had a character back here, that would not count. But as long as they're somewhere out on the main board, that counts. But of course, the cost is going to be that they both have to come home. And the shaman can go to the hearth, but the follower has to go all the way back. And now we're going to have this third ability that when we convert gems, we get +2. We also get an orange crystal for claiming that. And blue is still struggling to turn in 3 crystals. They're going to use their movement to go probably just directly onto there, get a red, reduce their movement down to 4. And I think they're going to play 2 cards in order to bring that up to 6. A yellow and a blue. It's going to let them place a black and a blue. You know what? I think they're actually going to save their blue tiles for when they really want them. And they're going to do something a little weird, which is to put 2 shadow tiles over here. There's 1 more temple piece. There can only be 3 temples. So you know what? I think they're going to actually spend all their cards, and they are going to play 2 of them as blue, but bicolor in order to form 3 shadows, and they're going to be blue. And that'll be 5 points at the end of the game. Then as they end their turn, they're going to claim this magical land. They have to pay with the 6 die, reducing it down to the minimum. And now whenever they claim a green or yellow land, they get an extra crystal. Of course, they get a crystal for doing that. I said yellow, the rules call it orange, probably to differentiate from the yellow and blue player colors. Oh, and you know what? I totally forgot. 2 of these tokens can be spent to do an evocation. Again, evocation is when you either bring out a new follower or convert a follower into a shaman. Blue would love to have, I mean, both players would love to have more characters, but especially blue, because they've got a couple temples over there that'd be great to just have somebody sitting on that temple all the time. Like you can spend 2 of these to do an evocation, but I think at this point, I'm just going to cash them in because both of these are the same, which is when you convert crystals, you get extra 3 points, and they're going to cash in a green, a red, and an orange. And they still have that green over there. So I guess they're using that one, but I think you're probably allowed to then lock in another one. Anyway, they're going to get the 15 points plus the 6 more is 21. Which means they finally get their first XP fragment. And I think they want this one that says whenever you get a land, you get an extra crystal, which is really nice if they can get their last 3 lands to fill up their player board because they're going to be getting a lot of extra crystals for doing that. But this stack over here is empty. which is 1/3 of the way toward the game ending. And now they are activating this red land, which means it's degrading. And if it finishes, that will be a second empty stack. This one's going to let them re-roll the yellow player's die, reducing the 7 down to still a 7. And then they get an extra one of these tokens. So maybe they will be able to evoke after all. Oh, but here's a shortcut to evocation. Well, no, this just converts a follower into a shaman, so they definitely don't need that with 2 shamans right now. And actually, when this land stack became empty, I skipped a step, which is that all of the mystic gates should have gotten a new token placed. And if you were playing the level 1 version of the game, those would instead be crystals. And the final version of the game is going to have colored indicators to show you which color of crystal goes on each of those different gates. Yellow has a bit of a lead, so they'd love to be able to close this out. Yellow is so close to being able to do everything they want to do. But I think I'm gonna have to settle for this. So we're gonna move, we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 onto the red land, claiming a red crystal. 2 more movement, we'll put our follower here. And then I'm gonna move again, go 1, or actually, first I am gonna spend the 2 tokens to do an evocation. With that evocation, we get to have a new follower. Now I'm going to do 7 more movement. Go 1, 2, 3. I think I actually want to be in this temple space. And then 4, 5, 6, 7. Just barely making it onto the hearth. I would have loved to make it into the temple, have 2 characters score at the end of the turn. Or have this character end here. Although I realized that we'd have to claim the land before doing the red land ability, so I'd give up the 3 cards and degrading that, which kind of pushes us toward the end of the game, which is what we're thinking of doing as well. But anyway, I think I'll just end like that. Man, or maybe it's worth it just to finish and claim that tile, the green tile. Yeah, you know what? I am going to do that. So I got the red crystal for going there, but I'm not going to be able to trigger it at the end of the turn because before that happens, we do this step, which is going to require us to return 2 people home. I'm pretty sure they had to be on the main board. Well, no, the follower can be, the other follower can be sent back to here. Oh, these are both followers. They both have to go all the way back here if I want to do that. Yeah, let's do it. So I'm going to claim this. I'm going to get a green crystal for that. And then I'm going to draw 3 cards and degrade this into nothingness, which means this next one is revealed. This is reset. 2 blues and a yellow for the yellow player. But now at the end of the turn, they're not going to score the points for having anybody in the temple. So is what it is. And then of course, we're going to convert a green, orange, and red into 15 more points, going up to 40, say 51, which put us past the 40 mark, and we get a second experience fragment. And I'm going to take the discard 2 and draw 2 each turn. The other thing you can do is actually flip these over, and then they become an extra spot where you can store a crystal. So if I felt like I needed room for a 5th crystal, I could forego the ability, but I'm not going to do that. Blue is feeling the crunch, although, and I checked the rules again, I had forgotten that every tile of your color showing at the end of the game is 2 points. So in addition to currently controlling 2 of the 3 temples, blue also has a ton of their tiles showing, which is going to be a nice chunk of points, unless yellow does something about that before the end of the game. Oh, and yellow had this location, so when they convert crystals into points, they get 2 more. So 53. So now blue really does need cards because they really do need that die to be big enough. This is stinky, but they're gonna have to spend a turn drawing cards and then discarding them. Or drawing cards and moving 2 spaces? No, I think they just have to draw 5, discard 5. They got mostly yellow. This one can be blue, but so we're gonna discard them all to bring our 2 up to a 7. And then what kind of tiles do they want to place? There's only 2 blue tiles left. You do not get a bonus for playing them all. I mean, you get a bonus for if they're showing at the end of the game. They can spend 2 to reclaim. Actually, this is so far on the other side. I think they're going to spend 2 as a dark shadow tile to go back on top of that. Although it's still full size. So actually, maybe that doesn't make sense. Well, yellow's going to have to cover it back up. So I think blue doesn't want to use up one of their tiles because yellow is going to have to cover that anyway, or very likely to. So why throw down a blue that you know is going to get replaced? With another yellow, they'll block this yellow shaman in a little bit. And I almost think they want to preserve their last 2. So you know what? They're just going to spend their last 2 cards, save their last 2 blue tiles for later, and just do this little maneuver again. Make this all, remove the yellow. have to get covered back up by the yellow player. Blue does get to use this ability again, degrading it though, but that's going to re-roll the yellow die to a 3 this time, and they get to claim another token, which is when you convert crystals, get +3 points. Well, yellow can start by just re-rolling their die again, see if it's better than a 3. 5 is a little better. Their characters are completely trapped. I assume you're allowed to overspend, as in discard too many cards, more than you need to increase your die, to put extra tiles down. Because I think yellow really needs to get some tiles down. I'm going to discard 4 cards to put 2 yellow shadow tiles here and here, keeping that temple full size. So we're definitely up to 7, but I also need to cover this tile here. So let's spend another couple cards, put some more yellow in. Actually, I forgot, you can move over the dark shadow tiles. It just takes 1 extra movement. So I might not have to spend those last 2 cards, but I think I will. Let's put that there. And then we can do a move. We can go 1, 2. I'm gonna get this. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then another move. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You know what? Let's say I discarded my last card to put another yellow here, and then that 7th movement can put them all the way over to there, which means I get a red. Gonna reveal the token I got from there, which is add +3 to my die. I guess adding in the temple wouldn't have been awful. I think I like this more. So during the fate phase, we're gonna do the mystical source to reveal up to 7 worth of lands. We have to remove, or we have to reveal them all. Ooh, this actually costs 6 die and a crystal to convert a follower into shaman and get a +1 follower. So it's basically an evocation. And then this one is requires a 7, and at the end of battle you get to recover 2 of the cards you played every battle. Then still during the fate phase, I'm going to go ahead and conquer this. That guy actually stays there, I think, because I didn't have, or no, I think they always come home. Oh, and that for him, that's over here. To pay a crystal for this one, and I have to drop my die down, get a green crystal for taking it. And then I'm going to activate this red land, which gives an orange crystal, which conveniently means I have a set of 3 different colors for 15 more points, going up to 68. There are 2 stacks empty now, and then because a stack emptied, this space that lost its token recovers a token. Interestingly, yellow has left them in a vulnerable position. They have no crystals and no cards. Blue's also has no cards, but they're gonna spend their first action to draw 5. They got a nice chunk of blues there. They're gonna turn in 2 tokens to get another follower, and then they're gonna move with 7. Go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then with a single action, they can go all the way onto one of their temples. The temple that has 3 hexes to it. Still have 2 movement left, but they only need 1 to slide all the way around to here and attack. Of course, the attacker gets the first move, so they're going to do the same thing they did before, attacking for 8, pushing yellow all the way to the back. They have to lose something. They don't have anything. And then on their turn, they have nothing to fight back with. So blue just wins the fight. I'm going to claim this second wild crystal, putting yellow at -9. Blue gets 9 for, or gets 8 for pushing yellow back to here. So it's going to put them up to 30. This character has to come home, and I think blue would get to claim this, which lets them spend a crystal to re-roll their battle die. That was both of blue's actions. They're going to do this, which is going to force yellow to re-roll their die. Not that it matters that much. These are discarded. Blue also gets a token from that, which says another battle crystal one. But that fully degrades this location, which means it's removed, and that is the 3rd empty stack, which means the game is ending. They also get 3 points for ending their turn with a character in a 3 hex temple, putting them up to 33. And they have stored a green crystal. I was thinking they only had the 2, but they've got a green and the 2 pink that they've never, well, one they just got. They never spent the other one, which means they can cash in a 15-point conversion, putting them up to 48, which means they get another one of these, although I don't think that's going to matter at this point. And since there are 3 empty stacks, the game's over. We're going to do final scoring. Each temple is worth 5 points, goes to the player who controls it. In this case, yellow has 2 points of control and blue has 1. So yellow wins that for 5 points, going up to 73. The other 2 are controlled by blue, so they go up to 58. And just in case you cared, the characters on those temple hexes also count. So this character would count in case that mattered, but obviously it's completely blue over there. Also, the size of the temple doesn't matter. This one got reduced down to 2 hexes. Doesn't matter because that only happens during the game as you end your turn in those spaces. Yellow loses 9 points because of their lost health, bringing them down to 64. Every shaman is actually worth 10 points and every follower worth 5. So it's 20 more points for yellow, bringing them up to 84, whereas blue actually has 2 shamans and 1 follower. So that's 25, bringing them up to 70, 84. That's a tie game, except for the blue tiles. There's actually 2 more things to score, so don't get carried away. Every hex is 2 points. Yellow's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 12, putting them up to 96. Blue has 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 for 24 points, putting them up to 108. And finally, the players score based on how many locations they have. So again, from the beginning of the game, 1 location is 5, all the way around to 6 locations being 40 points. Yellow actually has 5 locations, so that's going to be 30 points. So 100, 110, 120. And blue just has 3 locations, so that's 15 points. So there, 124. So assuming I did that math right, blue ended with 124 and yellow ended with 126. Difference of 2 points after all of that. I thought yellow was completely ahead, but between that last attack, the extra shaman, all the hexes on the board, blue was actually really, really in it. Also, I wonder if they could have used these tokens at some point to generate an extra follower just for 5 more points. I'm actually not sure on the timing on that because they gained the second one during the cantrip phase of the turn, which is right at the end of the turn before we triggered the end of the game from that red territory fading away. So it's up to you who you think won. Certainly a lot going on. Again, I was playing the level 3 version of the game. So the level 1 version would not have any of these shadow tiles. It would not have the temples. The battles go down to 8. It doesn't have these experience fragments. It doesn't have these little special ability tokens. It just has the lands. It has the crystals, has the fighting, but I think this, to me, feels like the full version. But of course, it's up to your preferred level of complexity. But I think playing around with the tiles is pretty interesting, and I really like getting the special ability fragments. The yellow players certainly use this one a lot to not have to reduce their die after moving, assuming that's what it will be like in the final version of the game. There's also an expansion box, which actually raises it up to level 4 and then 5, adding a couple more components in. There's also a solo campaign in that box that I haven't looked at yet. But anyway, let me know what you think. Check out, again, the Kickstarter or the crowdfunding link in the description. Thanks for watching. Subscribe so we can get more subscribers, and bye.